Hi guys, welcome to Money by Sunny. In this video, we'll be going through 7 great tips on how to pay off your credit card debts. It's a fact that credit cards can be a useful spending tool, for example in covering unavoidable emergency type expenses, or even to amass spending rewards such as points or cashback. The credit line in your card can be a lifesaver in certain situations, such as when you're hit with a large, unanticipated expense and you don't have the cash to pay for it. And they're so easy to use too, especially now that contactless payments are becoming more and more common amongst merchants. It's literally as simple as just tap and go. However, this ease of use and the large credit lines available have a dark side. They simply make it too easy to rack up debt, which can be a case of both overspending and not paying off card bills in the right way. Paying off credit card debt is certainly possible, but many people choose to ignore their bills, and then they later have to worry about the penalties and the interest that they accrue over the years. Stay tuned as we'll be covering some of the best tips and tricks on how to get that credit card debt under control. We'll first go through 3 best practices on how to make sure that you stop adding to your debt. This is important as the last thing you want to do is to keep increasing the size of your debt pile while you're trying to pay it off. This is a bit like trying to empty a bathtub while the faucet is still on. Once this is in order, tips number 4 to 7 will then talk about some great ideas on how to reduce your existing debt in a smarter, more organized way. Let's get right into it. Tip number 1. Stop using your credit cards. Sounds simple, but this is the key first step you should take to ensure that your credit card balances don't increase. As we talked about earlier, it's so easy to use credit cards to pay for purchases. And this is exactly why you should stop using them. There are a few ways to accomplish this. You could use the brute force method of cutting up your credit cards, or you could just leave them in your locked closet drawer when you go out. This can be a difficult step for many people, as there can be a lot of emotional attachment to credit cards, and the spending power that they provide. However, it's a vital step that needs to be taken to avoid adding to the debt problem. The only exception here would be if you use your cards to pay bills, such as for utilities. Since these are must-haves, you can continue to pay them via your credit cards and collect the rewards. And of course, it's even better if you have auto-billing set up, so that you're never late paying these bills. Tip number 2. Use cash or a debit card for purchases. Instead of a credit card, use cash for your purchases. This will ensure that you keep a lid on your spending, since you're only spending what you already have, instead of dipping into your credit line. If you prefer not to carry too much cash around, you can instead use a debit card, so that you still have the convenience of using plastic. However, be careful that you don't overdraw your account, which will incur overdraft fees. These can be pretty hefty, so you definitely want to avoid this. It basically puts you back in the same position of increasing your debt. Tip number 3. Set up a personal budget. Now that you've stopped or minimized using your credit cards, it's time to put a personal budget into place, so that you can start to figure out how to pay off your balances. A personal budget is simply a schedule of how much money you will need to spend in a given period of time versus your income. This is usually on a monthly basis, since that is easier to track. If you're interested, check out some videos that I have on this topic, so that you can find out how to set up a budget and which budget type you want to try out. In keeping with the cash-only spending ethos that we talked about in tip number 2, you may want to consider the cash envelope budget, which is a great way to get a firm hold on your spending by splitting your spending into categories and using only cash for purchases. I've left links for these in the description, so do have a look. Now that we have a solid foundation in place and we're not adding to the debt, it's time to figure out how to chip away at it and get it under control. Tip number 4. Pay off your credit cards using the Snowball method. The Snowball method is a way to pay off one credit card at a time, starting with your smallest balances. To use this method, first make a list of your credit cards with their balances and minimum payments, and then identify the card with the smallest balance. Let's call this card Tiny. Then pay the minimum balances for all your other cards to ensure that you at least don't incur late fees. Then, pay as much as you can into Tiny. Do this every month until Tiny has been paid off. Then identify the next Tiny and repeat these steps. The main benefit of this method is that you can see progress more quickly which can be a big help psychologically. You'll be able to start cancelling your cards more quickly since it's the smallest balance ones that are getting paid off first. Tip number 5. Pay off your credit cards using the Avalanche method. The Avalanche method is similar to the Snowball method in the sense that it focuses on paying off one card at a time. The difference being that it's the card with the highest interest rate that is attacked first. Without addressing the high rate cards first, those will continue to accrue interest, which will not only cost more overall, but will also be a drain on your financial resources. With this method, you pay the minimum amount owed on all cards except the highest one. For this card, you should pay as much in excess of the minimum amount as possible. Once the balance for the highest rate card has been eliminated, roll that payment into the next highest rate one, while continuing to pay the minimums on the lesser ones. This will ensure that you're making the power of compound interest work for you by reducing your high interest debt as early as possible. Tip number 6. Consolidate your cards into a loan. If your credit card balances seem overwhelming and you're struggling to deal with them, one way to pay them off more effectively is by combining your balances into a single loan. This method is usually referred to as debt consolidation. This can be beneficial in many ways, the most important of which being that it can help you get a more favorable interest rate overall. As long as this rate is lower than the combined rate of your credit cards, this will reduce your interest expense. It can also be easier to manage one consolidated loan, rather than have to deal with multiple credit cards with different minimum payments each month. The best way to put this into place is to contact your lender, who can give you more specifics on the various programs that they have. A variation of this is to consolidate your credit cards into a 0% APR credit card via a balance transfer offer. Banks do offer these from time to time, so be sure to keep a lookout. Do note, however, that these 0% offers are temporary, meaning that the credit card will eventually revert to a regular, non-promotional rate. Also remember to check the offer T&Cs to make sure that this regular rate isn't higher than that of your existing cards, so that you're not losing out after the promotional period expires. Tip number 7. Pay off faster with a side hustle. We've talked about different methods of paying off your cards in a more effective and strategic way. But another complementary way to cut that credit card debt faster is to simply pour more money into it each month. To do this though, you need to boost your income. Fortunately, there are so many opportunities for you to start a side hustle to earn a second income. This can range from more straightforward things like Uber driving or grocery delivery, or to other gigs that are more freelance and work from home in nature. With these, the idea is to identify what marketable, in-demand skills you have. One way to get started is to look at side hustles that are somewhat related to your day job. For example, if you're a teacher, then tutoring at night or on weekends could be an option. From these starting points, you'll be able to figure out exactly what services you can offer. Have a look at sites like Fiverr and Upwork to help in doing this. And you'll also be able to get some insights on what the most popular and in-demand work is. So there you have it. I'm sure these 7 tips will be super useful and really help you get in control of your credit card debt, or even help avoid getting into that debt in the first place. If you like this video, please do subscribe and leave us a comment. See you next time on Money by Sunny.